So I'm in a weird position, right? Because I don't love the BFMF belt. I never really have. But I'm also going to sit here right now and give a little bit of a defense off of what you said. I don't feel comfortable with this, but I'm doing it anyway, all right?
This fight got me jacked up, Ed. You can't tell. That is a moment for the ages. Unreal.
It's like out of a movie,
Yeah.
guys.
Oh my god.
I'm all about the action that's going to happen in this cage. The cage is going to be lit, dude. I don't care about the build-up. I'm showing up anyway. You're going to show up anyway, and you're going to be entertained. Are you not entertained?
Welcome back to Against the Cage, your MMA home for all the previews, recaps, and exclusive interviews that your heart desires. My name is Jake Aryeh. I'm here with Scott Fontana and Erich Richter. And guys, it is UFC 318 Fight Week, a swan song of sorts for Dustin Poirier. The fight taking place in his backyard of New Orleans, not too far from Lafayette, Louisiana, where he grew up, and he'll be headlining that card on Saturday night. And I thought it would be fun for us to go through some fighters that we may have liked to have seen get the similar treatment, or fighters that we would like to see get this similar treatment in the future. So, Scott, I will start with you. If you could have any fighter from the past or current get a treatment similar to Dustin, who would it be?
All right, I'll give you someone from the past and someone right now. And if I'm looking back, I think the obvious choice is Georges St-Pierre because of just how much he meant, not just to the city of Montreal, where ostensibly you would be doing something like this, but also to the entire country of Canada. I mean, he is beloved there. They have not had a presence from there even remotely close to the level of Georges St-Pierre. So it would have been nice. I will say he had plenty of moments to shine at the Bell Center. So it's not like he didn't miss anything. But then the other one I'm going to give you, Max Holloway. This is another kind of obvious choice here, right? Present day guys. Absolutely deserves the chance to fight in Hawaii for his last one. Dana White threw some cold water on that this week, though, reminding how tricky it is to do events there, even though, Bellator has done events there.
I like it. Eric, who do you got?
One that I wish had happened, because I'm assuming he's not going to fight again, is Nate Diaz. Excuse me. Nate Diaz, Stockton, California. Big time. Like, he was always, repping him and Nick Diaz. Always repping 205 and Stockton. He's like, every time that Nick Diaz was walking into the octagon, Stockton, and some other expletives. But I think that would be a really fun one. And I understand, Stockton doesn't have an arena. It's not exactly built for that. I looked it up. Oakland, California is about a 2-hour drive. They have the Oakland Arena, houses 19,000. It wouldn't be, wouldn't be ideal, but who knows? Maybe Nate Diaz could make a return, and we could do a swan song for him. It doesn't seem like him and the UFC are on the best of terms right now after he lost the Jake Paul boxing match, and it seems, increasingly unlikely that they work together at this point. But I think that is the one to make. I like the Georges St-Pierre call out there, Scott, but give me a Nate Diaz in Oakland, California, and one last time for an old hurrah for an all-time favorite.
I think it's interesting.
By the way, I believe it's 209, my friend.
Oh, 209.
209. My bad.
Is it? Okay.
It's all good.
I think it's interesting that for Nate Diaz's swan song, they're gonna feed him to Khamzat Chimaev. They're like, this is the same thing, right? No.
No.
For me, and I think it's important to preface when looking at the swan song thing. It's main event, right? So if you're picking someone from the current, it would maybe need to seem realistic, that they would be able to main event a pay-per-view card. And I think that Alexander Volkanovski is someone who I think that would make sense in his career. He is getting past the 35 age, and he seems like he's nearing the end of his career. So for me, Volkanovski, somewhere in Australia. I don't know exactly which province of Australia it would be that would make the most sense for him, but yes, that's my pick. I gotta love Volk.
At least he gets to fight there, and honestly, there's a realistic chance that he'll just happen to fight in Australia for his last one. He may not even main event it, but they like to put their Aussie guys down under. It's easier to get them to fight there than certainly American guys for a lot of tax-related purposes.
Yes, yeah.
That's it.
But like I mentioned at the top of the program, this is an event that centers around Dustin Poirier. He's finishing his career at lightweight, started off at featherweight, but I think we could take a look back on his career since this is the last one, and in lieu of this final fight, look at where does he stand in this all-time lightweight conversation. I'll start with you again, Scott. Where do you think Dustin Poirier ranks in the all-time lightweight conversation?
Maybe people won't love to hear this, but I have him just outside the top five. I think there are some very qualified champions who their body of work is still above that which Dustin Poirier was put together. I think in terms of how beloved they are, he goes higher, right? But in terms of, let's say, accomplishment and that kind of thing, I think there are guys you could probably almost put these in either order: Khabib Nurmagomedov and Islam Makhachev. Those are kind of the two standards I have, and if you want to go one or the other, that's fine. I'll give you a couple more. BJ Penn, that certainly could even go to the number one. Charles Oliveira, I would still put ahead of Dustin Poirier as well, and also Takanori Gomi, who was from the past as well, gets slept on a little bit. But I could see you moving Poirier in there. It's reasonable.
How about you, Eric?
I agree with all the four names that you said. That should definitely be higher than Dustin Poirier. Takanori Gomi, another good shout. Didn't have him on my list. One that you didn't have was Frankie Edgar. No way I have Frankie Edgar below Dustin Poirier, so that puts him down to at least seventh. I think he's in the Tony Ferguson range, and I know Tony Ferguson's career ended horribly, but Tony Ferguson had a 12-fight win streak at lightweight. That Khabib fight, it never ended up happening, but that Khabib fight was always on the tip of everybody's tongue for a UFC fan, and so that's where I have him like in the 8 range. You could also put Benson Henderson there. Rafael dos Anjos was a champion, like an actual champion, not an interim champion. Rafael dos Anjos was the actual champ, so you probably have to put him ahead of Poirier. It's very hard for me to get to the point where I could put him in the elite class without having held the title or defended it for any long amount of time. That's why Conor McGregor is not up there. He only fought lightweight twice. And there's just some other guys. I know there's just some other guys there that Dustin just can't really get over. I'll give him over Eddie Alvarez for sure, but that's about it.
Yeah, and important to note, too, with going off of that, when you're talking about him in the lightweight conversation, that's kind of chopping his career pretty much in half. He started out a good chunk of it at 145. Scott, you look like you've got something to say.
I don't know how much we're really cutting off of Dustin Poirier. He was still semi-prospect at that point. Like, obviously, I think he'd shed the label just a little bit by the time he fought this fight that we're going to talk about later in the show from our homework last week against Chan Sung Jung. They were both still kind of up-and-comers at that point, and that was the fight that more or less both changed the direction of his career and essentially started moving him toward that lightweight shot. He's been a lightweight for 10 years in the UFC out of, I believe, 14. So I think most of his body of work, it's different than, say, a BJ Penn, right? Who made a lot of his bones up at welterweight or higher, even in some cases. And Charles Oliveira, he certainly had some experience. His career is almost chopped in half more because he had a lot of flyweight experience. But most of his best
or featherweight, rather,
was at lightweight. But featherweight, thank you. Yeah, I don't know. It does get tricky because we're talking about a lot of guys who's been at different weight classes. Benson Henderson spent a little bit of time at welterweight, but was mostly at lightweight. Frankie Edgar made a lot of his legacy down at 145. His highlights were at 55, but he didn't stay there as long. So it gets tricky, right?
It is tricky. But I guess the reason why I say that is you kind of think of Dustin Poirier, and you hear people say this all the time, like maybe he's the greatest fighter to never win a title, and not necessarily the conversation that comes up, is he the best lightweight to never win a title? So looking at the whole body of career from 145 to 155.
He might be the greatest lightweight to never win a title. I think that's probably a pretty fair statement because a lot of these guys we're naming, right? They're the ones who, they won a title, so we got to put them ahead, right? And that need to do that, can't hate it. I get it. Like, they actually got to the top. Benson Henderson got to the top. I had him right behind on my list, behind Dustin Poirier. I could certainly flip him. It's really tough. I'm not like locked into this in some sort of marriage kind of thing, It's tricky, and it's also fun. We have fun with this kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I think anytime you're putting him in the top 5, 6, 7, I think he absolutely deserves to be in that conversation there, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But like you guys had mentioned before, there are some people who have won the title, like Conor, for instance, who, had a short stint, or maybe they, only had one defense or not even any defenses, where you could put Dustin above that. So I think just the fact that you could say that about Dustin alone says a lot about his career.
Conor McGregor falls deep off of this
No,
list.
I know. I'm not saying.
I mean,
I'm not saying
I know you're not saying he does. I understand, but
like an Eddie Alvarez,
for
instance, you could put Dustin above him, for instance.
Eddie had a really wonderful career though, and a lot of his best stuff was outside the UFC. He was beating real legit guys outside the UFC. Guys like, I mean, I believe he split with Shinya Aoki. I mean, nobody talks about Shinya Aoki, but if anybody knows, did you ever watch him fight, Eric? Because
I did not.
I bet our friend Eric or Jake has not.
I have
Shinya Aoki. I'm gonna assign a couple Shinya Aoki fights sometime.
Alrighty, there we
they're
go.
probably on YouTube or something, because he's a character. He is a violent fighter. Very, very high level. He kind of just did not go over to the UFC, not necessarily because he wasn't good enough. It just didn't really come together.
Yeah. Well,
yeah, I definitely like to watch some of his fights. Eddie Alvarez is an honorable mention, honestly. He just got beaten so bad by Conor that it's hard to get him on a list. Honestly, that performance was just so bad.
It's tough.
Yeah.
But listen,
I don't hold it that deep against him. The body work is impressive, but I understand it. It was a bad look. It was the highest spot he needed to win in, and he looked as poor as he could have. That's true.
Would you put Eddie ahead of Conor on your top 20 list?
Heartbeat at lightweight, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Career wise, no. Conor McGregor is much higher, but I think pure lightweight, two fights, I can't do it.
Yeah,
it's just he was barely a lightweight.
Yeah,
right.
Incredibly impressive performance for one of them, but yeah, the body of work is too small. I would agree with
Conor McGregor is a money weight. That's what he is. and if you go with money weight, I mean, certainly a lot higher, right?
Yeah.
And that's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
He's got the McGregor belt.
Yeah, it is.
Well, listen, the other guy standing across from Dustin Poirier in that octagon on Saturday night will be Max Holloway for the third time. And this is an interesting one because for Dustin, we know what is happening after Saturday night. Scott, in your interview with Dustin, he said for sure this is going to be his last fight. And
he seems really divorced from the idea of fighting after this. Like, he really seems like he's set with it. I thought he would have a little more reaction when I asked him about Poirier and, kind of seeing that. And obviously that'd be a fresh fight. And potentially he wouldn't be that far away from getting it if he still has the star power. But he's really like, no, I'm this is it. I'm done. And I respect that. I hope he holds to it. I hope he's happy holding to it.
Yeah. Yeah. Because, when you hear people like retiring, it just means like most of the times it's like, yeah, I'm retiring from the UFC. Maybe I'll do like a boxing match, like, in a couple of years or whatever. But for him, it seems like he's really there. For Max Holloway, it's a little bit less clear because he hasn't expressed any interest in retiring anytime soon. And he's just moved into the lightweight division. Seems like there could be a lot of road left for him there. So my question is, what does this fight do for Holloway? Eric, I'll start with you. What do you think?
Well, it gives me the opportunity to right some wrongs, right? He lost 2 fights to Dustin Poirier. He's 0-2 in this trilogy. And then the second fight in particular, when you look back on it, like he took a ton of damage in that fight. He was a big favorite, a big betting favorite in that fight, but he was moving up in weight, super last second, short notice. And then he moved up to 155 to face Dustin, and it was for the interim belt. I think now he's more grown into 155, whereas he might not even be able to make 145 if he killed himself to make 145. I don't know if he'd be able to do it. So I think that in this spot, he's more grown into the weight class. He's more prepared, and he's in a spot where he can just right the wrong. And I think that that's really big for Max Holloway's career, especially with where he's at right now, coming off the loss to Poirier. I think that, he's the BMF. He's got the BMF belt still, and this is a spot for him right now where you can kind of like right some wrongs here for your career and get to the point where it's like, well, maybe that we can go ahead on a list between him and Dustin Poirier. But yeah, that's the way I look at it. What do you think, Scott?
For me, with regard to Max, obviously, yes, there's righting and wrongs here, but I see another angle where this is certainly fascinating for Holloway is it's a chance at fresh momentum as well. I mean, I think he started picking up a little bit of speed off of that amazing fight and win over Justin Gaethje, right? Up at lightweight, mind you. same weight class, and he's actually ranked lower in the stupid UFC rankings, which, explain that. Obviously, I know the reasons. But anyway, I think it's a chance for him to really put together some sort of real headway because he's gonna need a couple wins for him to get to the point where he can fight Ilia Topuria again, who obviously that was his last time out. Knockout loss, first time, it hurt, right? It hurt probably him personally, and also I think it hurt his momentum. This is his chance to get it going again, remind people that he ought to have the inroad over Justin Gaethje, except for the fact that yes, he did lose. So it's interesting. But I'm gonna give you this: if he can win this fight, and especially if he does it impressively, maybe the fact that he has that BMF belt shoots him up just a little bit more in the pecking order to get there. Because if Ilia Topuria wants that belt and the UFC says, hey, if you want it, you can have him again, there you go.
Fair enough. Oh, I don't know what my appetite would be for that, to be honest, because we just saw him get floored. Like,
Yeah, to see to steal a phrase from Ilia Topuria, we don't want to do that to Max.
yeah, there you
We
go.
don't want to do that to Alex. Not again.
No, but that's an interesting point for sure. Now, you just mentioned the BMF title, and Erich, I know you've got some thoughts about this. The BMF title, came as a one-off. It seemed like a one-off thing for Jorge and Nate back in the day. They brought it back for Dustin Poirier and Justin Gaethje, and then Gaethje comes away, gets slept at 300. We know the story. But, it lingers on. The BMF lives on. It lives to see another day, seemingly. Erich, what do you think about the BMF title, and does it really serve a purpose?
The spirit of it initially, and even through the Justin Gaethje fight, was awesome. But my issue with the BMF title is that you shouldn't have it. Like, he lost the fight to Ilia Topuria. I still don't understand why that wasn't like I guess it makes sense not to have a dual like championship bout. But if you were ever going to do it, it would be for the BMF belt. So I don't really agree with Holloway coming off of a loss, having the BMF belt. I just don't, in practice, I just don't understand it. So like, what is the purpose of it if it doesn't, he just got knocked out, right, by Ilia Topuria, and obviously the Gaethje moment was unbelievable. So he's definitely a BMF. That's not the part of it that like I'm really
You're
having
not
an issue with
arguing
it.
that, yeah.
I'm not arguing that he's not a BMF or the BMF even, but for me, why would you still have the belt after a loss? I don't really understand the thought process of what goes along with it. I would like to see someone fresh, maybe, especially after the loss. I'd like to see someone fresh have it. There's a lot of other candidates out there that you could put. Can't think of anybody off the top of my head, but like you could even change the weight class up. It's been it was at 170, 155. Maybe try 170. There's so many good fighters up there that you can get up there. But that's my issue with the BMF. I'm not sure if you have any issues with this, Scott.
So I'm in a weird position, right? Because I don't love the BFMF belt. I never really have. But I'm also going to sit here right now and give a little bit of a defense off of what you said. And I don't feel comfortable with this, but I'm doing it anyway. All right. We're diving into uncharted waters here. I think the reason why you don't put the BMF belt on the line for that first Ilia Topuria fight, it's not because of two belts. I have no problem with that. I think actually it almost makes more sense. But the way I can see them not wanting to have done that is Ilia Topuria has not necessarily been the most crazy active guy or like the most like I'm gonna fight anybody and do it. He's not that he's picked and chose, but he's kind of been disinterested in a lot of fights. He'll shoot things down. I think the spirit of the BMF was really the idea of I'm gonna fight anybody and I'll beat anybody. I'm a fighter, right? And Ilia Topuria, I think we've absolutely seen, especially over these last two fights, including the Max Holloway fight, that he is not just about the fighting life, but also that he is absolutely violent. But again, against that, we've got sort of he's just not like put him up. I'll fight anybody, whatever. It's really like he kind of keeps shooting down all these.
So
guys.
you're saying that
I
Ilia
think that goes
Topuria is
against
not a BMF, is what you're saying? I'm joking.
No,
I'm joking.
No, don't you dare.
No,
I think look, and I think if anything, he's actually more deserving of it now. But I would like to see the spirit of that belt for what it is, which is supposed to be, I guess, just say, man, I'll fight anybody. Who cares? Just line them up, I'll knock them down. And I think that's what we've seen typically from all of these BMF belt contenders, right? They'll fight anybody.
Both very compelling arguments. One thing I think that we can all agree on as far as is it purposeful in terms of the UFC, it's so that they can headline a pay-per-view without an undisputed belt on the line.
That is its utility.
That's the utility, is like the person that has the belt needs to be big enough to headline a card. And Max Holloway, Dustin Poirier, Justin Gaethje, look at the people that have fought for that belt. Nate Diaz had no business fighting for that. Like Jorge Masvidal, these are guys that headline cards. So it's really like BMF kind of means like biggest star, honestly. If you're fighting for the belt, you're a big star.
It doesn't though. It doesn't mean biggest star. It does mean it means somebody is like able to carry a card, like I think you're saying. I don't know if it goes beyond that though.
I think
I'm not saying if you win it. I'm not saying if you win it, you're like a big star, but if you fight for it, you have to be a star.
Yeah, I think we can all agree on that.
I would agree. Yeah. In this day and age, that's kind of what it is. Like if you think back to if you go way further back when there used to be more UFC pay-per-views that did not include a championship belt on the line. Usually those fights would have been, back when we had only 5 weight classes, or even when they started expanding to 7. Now we've got, all the women's weight classes. We've got 8 men's weight classes. It is a little different now. But yeah, I think back in the day, you would have seen, here's a fun one. I don't know, maybe Eric, you could think back to this more, because you go a little further back. I'm going to give you a fight that I think would have been a great BMF title fight back in the day. And I'm curious, I'm going to put you on the spot here. If you can come up with one that would be a different one. I'll go further back, and I'm going to do when Vanderlei Silva fought Chuck Liddell in that fight we watched for homework a while back. And that would have been a great BMF belt fight.
That would have been fantastic.
Yeah.
What's one for you? I'm gonna talk out slowly to give you the chance to think of one and try to spit one out for you. Who, my friend, would fight for the BMF belt?
Anything that involved Korean Zombie. I'm trying to think of one fight in particular. How about, Yair Rodriguez, if he was a bigger star at the time, not a big enough star, but everybody loved Korean Zombie the whole time.
Yeah.
So any Korean Zombie would have held this belt for probably years. if he depending on if he won or lost, but when he was
I might have won or lost. He also did have 2 years of military service in the middle, so he actually stepped away for a little while. Yeah, and in South Korea they have to serve.
Hey, and he was also in that fight ended similarly to another BMF title fight, last second knockout in a slugfest. So I think you're onto something there, Eric. It's something that also just kind of came to my head while we wrap up this BMF thing. Eric, you mentioned it'd be interesting to see it go to a different weight class. If Dustin wins the BMF title on Saturday night and retires with it, similar to how Jorge retired with it, they have the opportunity to do that. So we might see it go to a new weight class. If
might
Dustin
see it at
wins.
the White House in the co-main event.
Oh my God!
I know you guys don't want to hear it. I know you guys don't want to hear
this belt again. I don't mind them doing I don't know. If they're gonna recreate the belt though, I don't say 170. You threw out 170. I don't think that's the weight class. 135 has been there before.
It has been.
It has to be 135.
Oh yeah, that could be good.
135.
No
Sean O'Malley.
Question about it.
Star power, Sean O'Malley. No.
Good shout.
Could do it.
Guys that are trying to get into slugfest. No grapplers.
similar to
Scott. Not slugfest, just violence.
You know what?
Violence. Yeah.
Okay, this may be a conversation we're getting ahead of ourselves. We'll see what happens with the BMF. But let us know in the comments, what do you think about the BMF belt? Let us know who you think would be a deserved candidate to fight for the BMF belt. And then also, of course, let us know what you think about Dustin Poirier in terms of the all-time lightweight conversation. But guys, because this is a belt and it is a main event for a UFC pay-per-view, we're going to do our sports entertainment rating. I'm going to go first. I am going to give this from a sporting aspect. I'm going to give it a 4. And now, while we did lay out the sort of rules for our sports entertainment rating a few pay-per-views back, so you could go back and watch that if you're interested, I don't necessarily think that it needs to be a number 1 and number 2 fight to get a 5. I'm not giving this one a 5. I'm going to give it a 4. But, while they are not 1 and 2, I think just because they are so close in terms of their careers and where they're at, I think it's a good fight. It's a good matchup. I'll give it a 4. Entertainment, 5. I mean, come on. These guys are box office. Erich, I know you love box office, so I'm curious to see what you have to give, but how could this not be a good fight? Very excited for it. So, Erich, I'll go with you. What's your sports entertainment rating?
Yeah, I'm going back to negative Nelly over here.
Oh, whoa.
Yeah, I'm going back to negative Nelly. I'm going a 2 for sporting. I don't really like trilogy fights that often. I'm gonna have some more on that in a little bit, but I'm not too into the idea of trilogy fights, especially when it's 2-0. I understand Holloway's the favorite here in the third fight, but I'm not a big fan of trilogy fights in general. So I'm gonna go 2 on the sporting. Not that I think it's gonna be uncompetitive. I just think that they've seen each other a lot. And then for build up, I'll go 3 for the entertainment rating, and which I consider part of build up. I'm going to go 3. A lot of respect. I miss the trash talk. I would like a little bit. I'm not saying to be disrespectful to each other, but I would like a little bit more aura, a little bit more build up, a little bit more excitement.
Dustin's
I'm not
got it.
asking. I'm not asking for Conor McGregor. Your wife is in me DMs. I'm not asking for that. But I am asking for sell me why you guys are gonna fight each other. Like why? Like what's the story? It's more so, Dustin, I'm retiring. I don't know what kind of shape I'm in. I had a bad last fight. I look terrible against Justin Gaethje. It's a little tough for me. But Scott, hopefully you're in the middle because
You're like, what I love is that you are so incredibly on brand with why you don't like it. Because it's all about, there's not enough trash talk. All you want is trash talk, my friend. And I'm not dissing you, I'm just pointing it out, right? That's
I always talk
often
about
the
trash
drum you're
talk.
beating.
I think trash talk
Yeah.
is a big part of the sport that they are missing.
I can't disagree with you that it's not a big part of the sport.
It's two things, right? There are two ways to go. There is absolutely that element of it because combat sports has that because pro wrestling is infused into MMA's DNA in a lot of ways, right? But there's also the origins of this being martial art and respect and honor and that kind of thing. So I do tend to lean the other way, and I think that's an absolutely viable way to go. But I understand why you and other people feel that way too. I just think there's two ways to go. And I think if you lean into one or the other, you're doing something to appease certain fans. If you kind of go in the middle, you don't do enough, then yeah, now it's a little blah, right?
You're in a weird limbo.
Yeah, exactly. So to get over to my rating, yes, I am going to go in the middle on the sports rating. I'm going with a 3. I actually understand Erich's point a little bit. I'm almost closer to the 2 than the 4, Jake, frankly. Because they're not the top guys. They are not.
Yeah.
And frankly, from a competitive aspect, we've already seen one guy clearly win both fights. So it's not just a trilogy, it is a lopsided trilogy. And not just even a 2-0. It's we've seen this before a few times, which fascinates me that the line is as close as it is. I'm not going to steal Erich's thunder on that one. He'll cover that, I'm sure, later. But so I got a 3 on that. Entertainment, give me a 5, dude. I'm all about the action that's going to happen in this cage. The cage is going to be lit, dude. I don't care about the buildup. I'm showing up anyway. You're going to show up anyway, and you're going to be entertained. Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
There we go. And you know what?
So I got an 8 overall.
Okay, I'm at a 9, but while I'm still on, I would like to preface that I think maybe one of the reasons why I gave this one pretty high scores because that was, if I'm not mistaken, that was the same night as a fight very near and dear to my heart, Izzy versus Kelvin Gastelum. So maybe I'm trying to relive one of my first loves in terms of fights in MMA. I loved that fight too. I mean, how could you not? Their second fight was fantastic. So.
There you go. So what do we have? We got a 7 1/3, I think, is our overall rating.
Alrighty. Yeah.
Jake and I pulled up Erich because Erich is way down at 5.
Erich's like, get it out. I want it out.
Moving on. I'm bored.
And then now listen, we've been talking about the main event this whole time. There's a whole other card. So Scott, I'll throw it to you. What is your fight to watch for the rest of 318?
I'm going with Dan Ige against Patricio Pitbull. Obviously, Pitbull did not have the strongest of showings, but I think that was a fight that unfortunately got put together at the wrong time in their career. So we've got Yair Rodriguez heading up, and basically he's not even heading up. He's there. He's at the top. Patricio Pitbull can only be heading down because he's been doing this for 15 years in front of us, right, in front of the masses. But I think this will be more interesting. I think it's a little more on the level. The potential violence is high on either side. I'm curious to see how this one goes.
Erich, how about you? What do you like?
I like Vinicius Oliveira. I've always been a fan. He got in to the UFC pretty recently, and just finishes. I mean, he's crushing that flying knee against Spojaj. I forget how to pronounce his name, but the flying knee was awesome, and he's been a betting underdog in a lot of his fights. Kyler Phillips, not the biggest fan. Kyler Phillips kind of gassy in terms of his cardio, so I'm interested to see how this goes. I think Oliveira could. I don't know if I'll say like a star or anything like that, but I think he could, ranked, maybe get into a top 10 spot with a couple wins. So yeah, I think that's a good fight to watch. Like, there's actually meaning to that one. It's a prelim, but there is meaning there.
I think that's a good shout. And honestly, I'm not even gonna poo-poo the idea of like him, possibly turning into a star, like having the opportunity to become a little bit of one. Because with that was like could have been a front runner for knockout of the year had our good friend Max Holloway not done what he did at UFC 300. Yeah. So if
I'm gonna throw it out there for you, Bernardo Sopai, is that who you mean?
Sopai, yeah.
That's right. Okay.
Yep.
We like to do weekly lessons of spelling and pronunciation for you, the listeners, and if some of our hosts benefit along the way, that's fine too.
Yeah, and if I don't pronounce something right, I will say it. I will call it out. I'll be like, oh, I'm not sure I'm gonna get it right, but I'm gonna try.
We love it. All right.
It's all good.
So, like I mentioned, there's a whole list of fights for UFC 318, of course. Scott, how are we looking for our event rating?
So this one, it's a 67, right, to cut to the chase, which is roughly on par with the UFC Atlanta card we had last month. Technically, it's a little stronger than that, stronger than any non-pay-per-view we've had this year, but also weaker than all but UFC 312. Dricus du Plessis versus Sean Strickland, that rematch, that was not the strongest card. Whenever they go to Australia, it doesn't really do it as well. Oh, was that Australia? That was Canada, excuse me, right? Which one am I thinking of?
No, it was.
They fought in Canada, and
it was
the first one was Canada.
Yeah,
this one was
Australia. Yeah,
yes.
But like,
whenever they go down under,
yeah,
they're often not the strongest cards, right?
Due to taxes.
I think probably the co-main. They needed a stronger co-main event to make this higher, and unfortunately, Paulo Costa against Roman Kopylov, it's not the biggest in terms of ranked fighters. We're talking about very lower to the top 15 or even outside of it when you think about the grand scheme of the sport. So could have benefited from a better co-main, but it's still a solid card. I'm not hating on it.
Its entertainment rating for that co-main event is also not that high either. It's that sports entertainment rating would not do very well.
That's fair too.
Alrighty. So with that, looking at some of these other fights, Eric, let's take a second to go through your 3 bets in 3 minutes. But before we do that, I hear you have some interesting stats to throw at us.
Yeah, so let's talk about this UFC 318 main event here. You have Max Holloway going up against Dustin Poirier. It's the third fight of a trilogy, which is pretty rare when the underdog in the third fight has actually won the first 2 legs of this trilogy fight. You guys might remember back in 2021 when Conor McGregor fought Dustin Poirier. I wrote about pretty much a data study of trilogy fights in MMA, not just the UFC. We're going back to Pride. We're going way back to like really the beginning of MMA. Just to point out here, and this was mentioned on the broadcast when Conor McGregor fought Dustin Poirier the third time, that underdogs really rarely won the third fight of a trilogy. By the time that these two fight, I think we know what's what, I think is the point. And yes, we have a rare situation here where the underdog won the first 2 fights, so take it however you would like, I guess is the point. But back when McGregor had fought Poirier, the underdog had won just 4 of the 17 times. 4 and 17, so 21 total fights there. 4 and 17 was the underdog. Now that we expand this out, I got a few more fights to play with here. I think that it's worth mentioning that there were 6 other trilogy fights that happened. The underdogs went 3-3 in those fights. But here's an interesting data point: is that 5 of the last 6 trilogy fights that have happened have gone to decision. I think that's super relevant. I think that a lot of times that these fighters already know each other. I think that this is a situation where trilogy fights, there's a lot of familiarity there. So With that, a little bit longer, a little prelude to 3 bets in 3 minutes. But you could read the article that I have up on actionhour.com from 2021. You could also go New York Post newspaper on Friday and online on Saturday, where I dive into the study a little bit more. I think it's pretty interesting. But we'll get started here with 3 bets in 3 minutes, and we're going to start with the main event. No shocker here, Max Holloway versus Dustin Poirier. And what did we learn here about the first 2 fights? And I think you learn a lot. Max Holloway was obviously debuting against Dustin Poirier, which is a crazy set of circumstances to see 2 legends at such a young point in their careers back in 2012. Max Holloway lost that fight by submission. And then, in the second fight, I think that we see Max Holloway on short notice going up to 155, interim belt, and he made a pretty solid accounting of himself. Now, just talking to people, everybody kind of is in agreement that are with Holloway this week. That he is a full 155er now. This is not a 145 fighter that's putting on a little bit of weight. He looked a little flabby if you rewatch that fight at 155. There's really no abs there. Max Holloway's in great shape for this fight. He is a true 155er, a big guy, definitely should have a size advantage over Dustin. And Dustin, while being a legend, and I think that he could have some early success, I think that, I think that he knows that he's on the downside of his career. That Justin Gaethje fight was pretty rough to see. And Max, for all of his faults that he had against Ilia Topuria, and Ilia Topuria's and it's his time, Max is in a spot where he beat the brakes off of Justin Gaethje in that fight, and Poirier looked real rough in that fight. I did not like what I saw from him. There's no way I'm betting him in this fight. I would go Max Holloway. I think there's value at his money line price. The official pick will be Max Holloway by decision, plus 140 over on Fanatics. And then, I don't really want to bet the co-main event. So for our second fight, we're going to go Kevin Holland versus Daniel Rodriguez. And Daniel Rodriguez, ton of faults here, right? Like, he's not a world beater. We know his takedown defense is a little shaky. We know he has a split decision win over Alex Morano, who's 24-10. I mean, Rodriguez comes in at 17-9, not much better. Kevin Holland definitely on a win streak here, 19-5, super active, in great shape right now. So you got to wonder what kind of shape Daniel Rodriguez is in. But Holland, a minus 600 price is too big against a fighter with Daniel Rodriguez, who I would expect to have minute winning potential for sure. Definitely no finishing upside. He did finish Santiago Ponzinibbio, but prior to that, I don't think he had finished a fight. I think we're going back to the Apex COVID days, the last time that he got a finish. So prior to that, wins over Kevin Lee, and then losses to Neil Magny and obviously Ian Machado Gary made quick work of him. But for me, Kevin Holland almost minus 600 just seems crazy to me at this point. For me, I'm going to go fight to go the distance at plus 165 with actually a little sprinkle on Rodriguez by decision. I think that Rodriguez could have minute winning potential on the feet, and if he's able to stop the takedown, which is a total mystery, I just think that plus 880 Rodriguez by decision just seems crazy to me. So I think that this is a little bit more competitive than people think. I'm going to go fight goes decision, and Daniel Rodriguez, I think he has a chance here to steal a decision. Could be looking for a split. And then last but not least, a solid prelim fight here. Bruno Ferreira coming in here at 13-2. He fights short notice opponent here, Jackson McVeigh. Did a little bit of tape study on him. He was over in the LFA for a while. He's 6-0. He had a pretty extensive amateur career as well. So you're not getting a total fish here where it's like, oh, he's only fought 6 times. No, he fought on the amateur scene. We're looking at, he was a 6-1 record on the amateur scene, fighting with LFA, and then LFA 6-0, and then he moved on to some other promotions. But whatever, he's a grappler first and foremost. He's a solid grappler. He can strike too, but I don't know how much you don't want to strike with Bruno Ferreira. Is definitely a stronger striker to say the least. 9 knockouts Ferreira. But what I like about McVeigh is that he's a solid grappler, and Ferreira, if he looks to go for a takedown, I think that McVeigh actually poses a bit of a threat there. Now, I'm not going to bet McVeigh here. He's a big underdog, and rightfully so. But I think the spot to target here is over 1.5 rounds at plus 195. I don't see a quick finish here from Ferreira. And, his last 2 fights have all gone to the second round. I mean, Armand Petrosian definitely profiles as, a better fighter than Jackson McVeigh is at this point. But I would say that I like the grappling upside of McVeigh. If he can, threaten it and stay away from the striking a little bit more, I think that you could, look at an extended fight here. And a lot of these prelim fights are expected to end via finish. There's some plus 500 to go to decision here. I think that those are all tasty. I would be really surprised if you saw a finish fest on the prelims. So for this one, I'm going to go over 1.5 rounds, and I don't hate a fight goes to decision at plus 400. So those are your official picks. Smaller bets for these ones. It's not my favorite betting card, but that's where I'm looking at for UFC 318. Those were your 3 bets in 3-ish minutes.
Alrighty, thank you so much for that, Eric. So that wraps up UFC 318. In other MMA news, we got PFL Africa on Saturday. And, this is the first voyage to Africa for a major MMA promotion coming from the PFL Saturday main card on ESPN Plus. And sort of the big story, at least for me in my mind, is that on this main card, there are no African fighters, not in the main event, co-main event, or any on the main card for that matter. We've got Johnny Eblen and Dakota Ditcheva on the card, for the main event and co-main. Eric, I'll throw it to you because your box office, do these two names in the PFL, does their star power sort of make up for this PFL Africa card not having any African fighters on there?
The PFL not having Francis Ngannou on this card is malpractice. Malpractice. It is outrageous that they signed him to this massive contract and have gotten him one fight. Francis Ngannou has fought one time, and I would venture to guess his contract is probably coming up with the PFL, and they probably paid him a ton of money. So I said, look, Johnny Eblen, no disrespect, Dakota Ditch, a huge star. They're awesome. I don't have an issue with them on the card, but not having Ngannou on here is outrageous. It is, it's unbelievable that they would have the biggest African fighter in the entire sport on their roster and not use him for this card. And I know Francis Ngannou's gone through a lot of personal tragedy over the last 2 years, but we could just push this back and see if we can get him on the card for later in the year or get him on for next year or something like that. But they just haven't made use of him. Look, the prelim, I don't think I've heard of one fighter on the prelims. It is all African fighters. I'm excited to watch them. I'm sure that the venue will be excited, and I'm sure that it's going to be good TV to watch. But not having Ngannou on here, it just makes me question why even do it. Why sign him at all? It just makes no sense.
How about you, Scott? What do you think?
All right, so I'm not as negative on the whole lack of Francis Ngannou on this particular card, and the reason being, this is clearly the start of several African cards that they are planning to have this year. They're starting a tournament. That's what the prelims are about here. That's why you haven't heard most of them. There's just a few guys I know on there. Franz Mlambo, I've heard of. I believe he also is trained out of Ireland, possibly out of SPG. I can't recall exactly. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of regional talent. That's what this is about. They're trying to develop talent out of Africa, and in that sense, I have to give props to it because I think there will be some diamonds in the rough to be found on the continent. And if you get them much more opportunities, especially to fight at home, I think that only fosters growth of the sport on the continent. I'm very good with that. It's on the prelims. We're not going to be now you can finally watch it in America. I believe the whole card is on DAZN, with the main card also available on ESPN Plus, right? If I recall, is that right, Jake? I think you knew that.
Sorry, say that one more time.
The main card for this, it is on ESPN Plus,
Yes,
correct?
yes, it is.
Yeah, but the whole card, top to bottom, including the main card, I believe is on DAZN. And that's early in the morning. Here, we're not going to be watching that. It doesn't matter. It's more for the local fans, and I'm okay with that. To get back to the point, though, of Johnny Eblen and Dakota Ditcheva, these are probably the two biggest stars you have outside of them. And, Paul Hughes, I think, is certainly in the mix as well. So,
100%.
Usman Nurmagomedov. If you're not going to have those two in the mix, these are your other two cards to play. I think they're still playing a strong hand, and I think there's still a chance we get Francis Ngannou in Africa later this year. So I'm gonna be patient with it. I think it's okay.
What I'm confused about with this whole thing is they're calling it the road to Dubai. It's PFL CapeTown road to Dubai. So I'm a little confused even just on that alone. is the next card going to be in Dubai, where all the African fighters go to Dubai? Like, I just, if you're trying to promote, PFL Africa, I would prefer it to be a little bit more clear, like what their plans are, because Francis Ngannou would be a great guy to have at the top where you're really promoting, you know, fights in Africa. But that's just me. I don't know. Like the road, when you look at like the name of it, it's not exactly clear what they're doing, what the plans are.
The PFL hasn't been
So some
great at
of
that.
some of PFL's intentions have always been a little unclear, right? Or even whether you can watch the fights or not. Now we have that clarity, but it took quite a while for that, didn't it? My understanding is that the finals of PFL Africa will take place in Dubai. I believe it's also Mina is being done that way as well. Or that might also be in Saudi. I can't recall exactly. But I think there's a build up to this. This I think is the quarterfinals of their tournaments. So that's what the prelims are. These are the quarterfinals. They're starting there, and then they'll go on and build from there. Again, I'm just not as negative on this. I think it's an okay way to do it.
I think that's what you said about in terms of building up the African talent. I think that's a very important distinction, and that helps me for sure. But I definitely do kind of agree with Erich about if you were gonna do this, do it right, do it big with Ngannou. So I like both of your arguments. Not to always play the middleman, but that is genuinely how I
But
feel.
I'm not sure where the next Africa card is. I didn't get the chance to look ahead. But if it's in South Africa, then it's still the same. But if it's somewhere else in Africa, I mean, Cape Town is a long way away from Cameroon, guys. Like the continent is massive. So
It
it's
is.
not exactly, the surroundings that Francis Ngannou is used to. This would be more like Dricus du Plessis territory, you know?
Right.
So I'm curious where the next one is. I didn't get the chance to look. I wish I had. If it's a little more northern or maybe in like the, central parts of Africa where it's going to be easier for, say, the people of Cameroon to be able to watch one of their countrymen fight, I'd say that'd be a different pace. That's fine. Just pump the brakes, guys. They're going to be in Africa again. It's going to happen.
I'm very
PFL,
interested to see where they go next.
just looked it up. PFL Africa 2 will be in Johannesburg.
Okay.
Okay, so still South Africa. It doesn't change much, but ostensibly they can still have him on that card. It doesn't make it any easier for the people of Cameroon to get there, but we'll see. Talk to us next time for PFF Africa 2. If Francis Ngannou's not on that one and we're not going to be in Africa later in the year, all right, I'm with you. I'm with you at that point.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Now, talking also another aspect of the PFL's decision-making process for this card. They put it on the same day as UFC 318. It's different time, because it is in Africa. It is a little bit earlier. I'm going to start with Erich on this one. Do you like it when there is a PFL event on the same day as a UFC pay-per-view, or should they even be doing that? What are your thoughts?
I prefer Fridays for PFL exclusively. Honestly, they should just try to do every single fight card on Fridays. Forget Sundays. Don't bother because then you're competing with the NFL at some point in some way during the football season. And if you want like a media rights deal, like which they literally hired a CEO as a former Turner executive to get them a media rights deal, like that is their main priority right now. They should be doing Fridays, letting the UFC they won Saturdays. I think that fight's over. And I don't even have an issue with this card. I think this card's actually really good. If the UFC put this card on, I'd say that this is a solid card. AJ McKee's on this card. Corey Anderson's
Yeah,
on this card.
I was just looking at it and I was like, oh,
It's
AJ.
a really good card.
And I also think that they have the right fighters on here in terms of star power. Like I said, I think Johnny Eblen, who's fighting Costello Vastinas, I think he absolutely deserves people's attention, and Dakota Ditcheva grabs people's attention as well. Her fight against Sumiko Imaba, I think that is an interesting one too. It's not that I certainly would expect Dakota Ditcheva to probably come out of that one victorious, but this is an interesting challenger for her. In terms of women who are not in the tournament already, right?
Scott, let's round out this PFL. CapeTown actually is how I should have said it first. I said PFL Africa. The event is PFL CapeTown.
They're calling it PFL Africa 1, Cape Town.
It's also PFL Challenger Series 2.
I can't anymore. Scott, give us the event rating.
They're all right, but they're also anyway. The event rating. You're gonna be surprised because the event rating. Maybe you won't. Maybe you'll see it, but the event rating is a 4.
Really?
Um,
That's
so
higher than I thought it would be.
this is in part, or I thought you'd think it was a little higher. Jake, I think Eric, you're probably more thinking it would have been higher, right? And the reason is that prelim portion weighs it down a lot, but also it's a little bit twofold because I looked at how the main card in and of itself compares to say some Apex cards and that kind of thing. And the problem is we have two big stars that are not fighting higher level talent. Costello Vanestinas is outside the top 50. That hurts a lot for that rating. And again, this is not entertainment. This is about competitive sport, right? Putting ranked fighters against ranked fighters. It's the lowest level talent that Johnny Eblin has fought since he became the champion of Bellator years ago. So that weighs it down a lot. But there's still decent talent here. There's like 5 men and women who are in the top 15 or so in their respective weight classes. There's a lot of talent here. They're just not always matched up well. One good matchup though, I'll give you top 10 in the light heavyweight picture. They're fighting at heavyweight. Corey Anderson, like I believe you mentioned, and Dennis Goltsov.
Gotcha. Well, I think maybe the reason why I wasn't as surprised as Eric, or why I thought that it was going to be maybe in that realm, is because I've had a little bit more conversation with you about how this like weighting scale works. So after going through the prelims, I was like, yeah, this isn't going to be good for the event rating. But listen, you just mentioned heavyweights, Scott. A heavyweight fight just happened on Saturday night. Derek Lewis beating Taliesin Teixeira as a huge underdog. We were talking about how much the UFC needed a new quote unquote a new face to the top of the heavyweight division. Obviously, Taliesin Teixeira wasn't like making his heavyweight debut,
or at least in
the
the
UFC.
mix of the
yeah,
heavyweight
at least
division.
in the mix of the heavyweight
just
division.
somewhere, right? We got to get some new guys.
Yeah, exactly. So, as a question, going off of that, where does Derek Lewis beating Taliesin Teixeira kind of leave this heavyweight landscape under their new king, Tom Aspinall?
So look, they're still in need of fresh blood. I think we can all agree with that. But I will say this: at least Derek Lewis has not fought Tom Aspinall yet. There is still a fresh opponent with a little bit more momentum behind him now than they had before. I think UFC can still sell that fight potentially down the line. We're not there yet. To the general fan public, he is very charismatic. He's a knockout king at heavyweight. There are ways that the UFC certainly wins with this result. Even with it being, unfortunately, the disappointing nature of the stoppage didn't help matters. But look, if you want to put Derek Lewis in there against someone who maybe he hasn't fought before, and there's running out of those guys, but someone ahead of him in the pecking order, he goes out there and wins another knockout fight. Why wouldn't they say, hey, Tom, you haven't fought this guy. How about we get him in there? And they've got a compelling fight.
Yeah, what do you think, Eric? And do you think the UFC is happy with this, or not so much?
I think that they're cool with Derek Lewis being a big star, but like, what's the line gonna be? Like the betting line gonna be when Tom Aspinall fights Derek Lewis? I mean, like -3. It might be the biggest favorite in UFC history. I'm not even kidding. Unless Aspinall just decides not to grapple, Tom Aspinall will be -1,000 minimum. Like he was, he was like -800 against everybody on the come up. Like the amount of hype that Tom Aspinall had at different points of his rise was insane. So, it's not even a stretch to say that Tom Aspinall would be at least -1,000 against Derek Lewis. So for the UFC, I think the heavyweight's just going to be a disaster. And it sounds like they might get the John Jones, Tom Aspinall fight back at the White House. I know we talked about the chance of that happening last week, but it seems more and more positive the more that we hear about it. So I'd say the state of the heavyweight division kind of just stays the same. Like if they get the Jones Aspinall fight, they're going to be fine. For me, and hot take alert, I would love to see Derek Lewis, and it will never happen, but I'd love to see Derek Lewis get out of his contract with the UFC and go to Bare Knuckle FC and win the $15 million prize tournament that just was announced. Sign me up for that. Derek Lewis would win, and there's no weight classes. So somebody might get really badly hurt, but Derek Lewis would definitely win that, and $15 million is a ton of money for him. So BKFC, Derek Lewis, sign me up. Let Derek Lewis go.
Derek Lewis loves money, dude. He loves it more
it.
than winning that title, so I can understand it. I just don't think it's actually going to happen.
I think that's a good shout. I mean, I would love to see it. I'm.
He would be fun for bare knuckle.
He would be great.
Oh, he'd be perfect. And there's no takedowns. Like, oh my God, think about how fun that would be.
That would be
Mm.
pretty fantastic. So I
'Cause
do
that's his
love
issue.
that shout.
He's not. He's a mixed martial artist. He's gotten better. Like his get-ups are, they're funny and they're solid. But he's not like a true wrestler, true jiu-jitsu guy. He's more of like, I will hit you so hard.
But Eric, in your betting preview, you cited his grappling as a potential difference maker in this fight. It didn't really matter in what we had of the 35 seconds of it, but that was part of why you picked Derek Lewis.
Okay, so yes, I did, and so one of the reasons I did that was that Teixeira's only fought 8 times ever, and all of them were ended within the first round. He had no ring time, so everything's case by case. The reason that Aspinall will be a -1,000 favorite against Derek Lewis is because he can't grapple comparatively to Aspinall. So everything's case by case. You are correct that that is why I had Lewis. But the reason I had Lewis was more so about his lack of ring time and Derek Lewis's experience, more so than it is about his skills with the grappling. Because he was using his grappling occasionally to help carry him in spots where he couldn't get a quick knockout.
I think we're both right.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Yeah.
Alrighty, so wrapping up UFC Nashville, Eric, you just mentioned kind of a quick hit yourself about the $15 million tournament from BKFC. Scott, let's throw it over to you for quick hits.
Guys, we have got a pretty full boat here, so buckle up. Unfortunately, we're going to start with some insane and frightening news. PFL featherweight champion Timur Khizriev was seen on video being shot by rubber bullets in Dagestan, and reported to be in stable condition after surgery, but frightening attack. We don't know the details of the backstory, but I mean, just for the health of another human being, certainly a speedy recovery to the champion. Randy Couture, better news outside of the cage, though. Randy Couture, we mentioned last week, I should say, that he is out of the burn center from previously reported crash that happened on a racetrack as he's been working toward making his racing debut. He's now recovering at home, and we wish the natural a speedy recovery. Naturally, over onto the let's say more tame fight news. Right, this is a little bit easier. Movsar Evloev, still not great though. Reportedly out of his fight against Aaron Pico, who was set to make his UFC debut next Saturday in Abu Dhabi. That was an ABC card. We don't know if a new opponent is going to be found for Pico, if he'll shift elsewhere. But again, another setback in the career of Movsar Evloev. We're still waiting for that title shot. It's not getting any easier, right? Conor McGregor has been in the news in a big way this week. And my understanding is nobody can stop talking about him saying that he is back in the UFC's testing pool, ostensibly with an eye on fighting. That's what I know you guys are all talking about. Believe me, that may or may not happen. I mean, frankly, at this point, are we really expecting him to get back in the cage? Believe it when you see it. Nate Diaz also has Conor on his mind frequently, right? He is thinking more along the desire of having them complete their trilogy. Believe it when you see it, guys. Same deal. Looking ahead, though, to fights that are actually seemingly in the works anyway, we have reportedly heard that UFC 321 is going to have Jailton Almeida against Alexander Volkov as part of its probably a main card fight, I would expect. That one still no main event for that Abu Dhabi event in October. Another storyline to watch going forward here is obviously that big broadcast deal. We've been talking about it for weeks. Eric's given us so much information, and we've been talking about it a lot on the show in general. UFC CEO Dana White was on the Full Send podcast this week, said that the broadcast deal, whatever it is that they end up, is, quote, the platform that is way more global. That is what we're expecting out of this one based on what he's saying. Stay tuned, I guess. Still awaiting that big news, right? If they do indeed leave ESPN at all, right? Speaking of ESPN, Murad Dvalishvili, the SB winner for Fighter of the Year. It's not necessarily the most major of honors in the world of sports, but it's an appropriate one. I mean, the last 12 months have been just titanic for the proud Georgian. So, congratulations to him. And lastly, to sum this one up here, to wrap it up here anyway, we have Chris Cyborg saying that she wants to fight out the final 2 fights on her PFL contract and then retire from her storied MMA career. I don't believe she was clear whether that would also mean the end of combat sports in general. She's been looking into boxing. She's been fighting boxing. She won back in May. Curious to see if that means the end of both or maybe just the one. Who knows? We'll see. But that's it, guys.
Alrighty. Thank you for that, Scott. Now, let's wrap this up with the final round. Yes, I did do my MMA homework. I watched Dustin Poirier versus the Korean zombie Chan Sung Jung. And yeah, this fight had absolutely everything that you could possibly want from an MMA fight. It had, flurries of striking, had ground reversals, submission attempts.
Ground reversals.
Yes, it was
Round reversal. All right, midway through the second round, Dustin Poirier's hurt bad. He's back against the cage, and he shoots a double. And Korean Zombie rolls over his own shoulder in basically a backwards somersault, lands in mount, and then
sick.
starts landing elbows. That is a moment for the ages. Unreal.
That's like out of a movie,
Yeah.
guys.
Oh my God, he is such a ninja. It was unbelievable. I was like, that was so crazy. So that was my favorite moment of the fight. Also, round 3, you see a little bit of what ended up carrying Dustin in a lot of his career was his back against the cage, hands up, and let's trade. I think I'm not saying that he didn't have this before. I'd have to really do tape study to really see, but you could see he's very comfortable back against the cage, hands up, ready to trade. That was in the third round, and Zombie was getting hit in the third round there. That's a spot where Dustin really grew from that point on, knocks out Conor McGregor back against the cage. Benoit Saint Denis does a counter striking against the cage. Oh, and Dan Hooker, another one, back against the cage. They're trading, and Dustin Poirier was able to, he's really good at parrying strikes. So, yeah, this fight got me jacked up, if you can't tell.
It was a great recommendation, Scott. Yeah, no, I mean,
Thank you. Look, it was really one of the best fights. I believe it was it was one of, if not the fight of the year, depending on which outlet was talking about it, right? This was a very special fight. It was on Fuel TV. I don't know how many people were really watching it when it happened live, but it really is an all-time classic. It's an underrated classic. You can almost not go wrong with Korean Zombie, like we've talked about before, but this was special, and I think it also helped forge Dustin Poirier into the fighter he is. I think he started to learn some real lessons from this as a young fighter. And if I'm not mistaken, he actually did move on to ATT after this fight.
Oh,
I believe the sentiment was, I believe him and Tim Crater, where he was trading out of in Louisiana, former UFC fighter from Louisiana, notable guy from there. I think my understanding was that it was kind of a mutual, like, maybe more can be done for you elsewhere than here, not because of the level of coaching, but more the level of training partner and that kind of thing, where some of these guys were part-timers. He was full-time
yeah.
on his way to all-time, and I think that was where it was. So not a negative, but certainly I feel like this was a net positive in his career. And that's why I think it's a fascinating moment too.
I wish so badly that other fighters would do that and other coaches would recognize that. There's been a lot of missed talent, missed growth opportunities by other fighters not fighting the elite of the elite competition. Couple that come to mind: Conor McGregor. I'd argue Sean O'Malley as well. I'd like to see him switch up camps. There's some opportunities there for other fighters to get in. And I'm not saying to go to the McDonald's factory. I'm just saying train around, go to different places, get some fresh bodies in front of you. Especially when you guys would even know this from jiu-jitsu. Other people know your techniques. They know your stuff. So unless you're learning new things, very consistent. It's easier to learn new things from other people. That's my point.
Get some
Iron
fresh
sharpens iron too.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%, 1,000%. That's why you see the Dagestani so good at grappling, so dominant. So they're always against the best of the best grapplers.
Well, let's wrap up this homework assignment and talk about the next one. Scott, what do you have for us?
I'm giving you another fun one. Justin Gaethje against Michael Johnson. The highlights UFC debut back in July 2017 after making a name for himself as an elite and exciting lightweight in the World Series of Fighting, which was the organization that predated PFL. It was kind of rebranded in about 2018 or so. So this is an interesting moment. And I don't think Jake has seen this.
No, I have not. I did know that Justin Gaethje was in WSOF. But I did not know that he fought Michael Johnson. This is the same Michael Johnson that has a win over Dustin Poirier, right?
And is fighting this weekend.
And is fighting
against
this
Daniel
weekend.
Zellhuber.
Full circle. Yeah. Alrighty. Talking about full circle, what's our this week in MMA?
I'm going back to July 2015, and it's not one particular date. It is an 8-day stretch, July 11th to the 18th, when they had 4 events in 8 days, starting with the amazing UFC 189, Conor McGregor beating Chad Money Mendez for that interim belt, launching him into a new stratosphere as well. Robbie Lawler and Rory McDonald going to war in their all-time fight. Next day, tough finale when Kamaru Usman came out on top in that Black Zillions versus ATT season. 3 days after that, we had a fight night in San Diego headlined by Frank Mir's knockout of Todd Duffy. And then 3 days after that, they're out in Scotland for Michael Bisping beating Thales Leites in a middleweight fight. This was their first time in Scotland. So they were very busy back in that day, dude.
Wow.
Imagine having to cover all that.
Jeez Louise. And then I think the next time they did anything like that was when they came back for COVID. Isn't that right, guys? We mentioned that on the podcast, I think, a few weeks ago.
Yeah. I mean, they had that Fight Island. They had 3, a couple times 3 fights in like a week or so and that kind of thing. But 4,
yeah,
good
that's
Lord.
insane.
I mean, they're all over the world too. They were in Scotland. They were in San Diego. They were in Vegas twice. It's like they're everywhere. It was crazy.
For those
crazy
UFC
times.
employees,
yes.
With that travel schedule, the UFC employees are just unbelievable. Getting still doing that. That's
absolutely
crazy.
Alrighty, guys.
And all the hardworking contractors as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Huge shout out to them, but huge shout out to you guys for joining me on the show today, and for you at home watching us. Enjoy the fights. Let us know what you thought about the last homework assignment, and enjoy the fights this weekend. I'll see you next week.
Listen, everybody. Good luck.